o'clock, and we're going to go ahead and get started. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the 2021 presidential debate as part of the University of San Diego's Associated Student Government Elections. My name is Lauren Fettis. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I serve as a senator for social sciences.
Hi everyone, my name is Ashley Rains. I also use she, her pronouns, and I serve as an associate justice on our judicial branch. We are so excited to serve as your debate moderators today. To start everything off, our debate structure is as follows. Every candidate will have 90 seconds to answer each question. Each candidate will have one opportunity in the debate for a 1-minute rebuttal. To start the debate, each candidate will have the opportunity to give an opening statement. Then we'll transition into asking a set of pre-prepared questions. In the next part of the debate will be a Q&A section, during which the time public may ask any questions they have. The Q&A feature will be open for the entirety of this debate, and members of the public may type any questions they have for the candidates, but please refrain from asking personal questions about any of the candidates. At the end of the debate, each candidate will have time to make a closing statement, and that will wrap up our event. And a copy of today's debate recording will be posted on the ASG YouTube and our Instagram.
All right, we will now get into opening statements. The candidates will each have 90 seconds to introduce themselves and tell their constituents a bit about themselves and why they want to be your next student body president, starting with Fantasy Bias.
Sounds good. Thank y'all so much. So I will kind of explain about what I'm doing right now currently at USD, and then kind of who I'm about and how I grew up. So my name is Fantasy Bias. I use she, her pronouns. I'm originally from Boise, Idaho and Ogden, Utah. So kind of really rural areas, but I tried to kind of escape and branch out and come to San Diego. Now I am a third year at USD. I'm majoring in sociology with the concentration in social justice, which I'm really passionate about, and minoring in the new minor change making, which has been awesome to learn about social systems and just awareness of social justice issues. So this helps me educate myself on, like I said, social systems and developing my collective organizing in new environments and new communities. For my first 3 years at USD, I've been interning at the United Front Multicultural Commons with collaboration throughout all of the commons, as well as the third floor with the student activities and involvement, Changemaker Hub, and departments like that. For the most part, this helps me focus on the liberation of marginalized communities and being a resource to those folks. I have shed light on actions such as racial justice issues, disability rights, migration issues, LGBTQ plus rights, and many more interconnected communities and barriers to inclusion of those communities, specifically at USD, but also in the community of San Diego and indirectly across the nation. I've been to some conferences and things like that that really helped me develop my passions. Currently, I am continuing my leadership within
Fantasy.
Thank you. Sorry.
It's okay. Justice.
Thank you, Lauren and Ashley, so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Justice Zotto. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Newtown, Connecticut on the East Coast currently. So I'm a third year here at USD studying international relations and Arabic. I'm first generation American and a first generation college student. So a lot of these experiences have definitely shaped my passion here at USD. And it's been really interesting to go into university and just be in these environments where I feel like sometimes they're kind of hard to navigate through. So definitely have some experience with that. And I've been in student government pretty much my entire academic career. I was the student body president in my high school, my senior year. But I've been specifically in ASG for 2 years. I was an academic senator for the College of Arts and Sciences last year as second year, and I'm currently the public relations chair for ASG. And so I have definitely navigated through ASG and learned a lot about being a leader. I'm also involved with Model United Nations and with Phi Alpha Delta, which is a pre-law academic fraternity. I also work part-time, and but it really mainly focused, I mainly focused my time and my energy into ASG, and I'm so grateful for my experience with ASG. So yeah, thank you so much all for this opportunity.
Right, thank you guys. So as the ASG president, you will be the voice that represents USD students. How do you plan to advocate for all undergraduate students, even those that are involved in areas that you are not directly connected with? Justice.
Yes, thank you so much for that question, Ashley. I've definitely learned to navigate through the University of San Diego. Definitely as ASG, I've learned to use office hours very efficiently. So opening up myself to students and to constituents and also reaching out to them directly. I'm here for literally all the students here. I'm open to any ideas, and I definitely value communication. So if I can, over communicate to get some change done and to actually get what students want, students pay a lot of money to be at this university, and the least that they deserve is to be acknowledged as students and as human beings. So I definitely will use all of my resources, connect with student orgs, meet with student orgs, establish those relationships. We've been fortunate to also build some relationships with student orgs this year, with our president and with our e-board and some senators. So continuing those relationships and really just doing whatever it takes. Also having all branches possibly go out to student orgs and participate in their events and listen to their constituents and really learn how to use office hours efficiently.
Great, thank you. Fantasy, you can respond.
Yes, thank you. The time goes by quick, so I'm going to talk quick. But as ASG president, I definitely will make sure I utilize the experience and the background that I've had before. I've been involved with ASG since I was at USD, and that kind of shows the leadership that I've kind of initiated for students. I saw a lack of support and a lack of, I guess, awareness of what students were going through. And I know that with my marginalized identities, on top of just the leadership roles that I've developed throughout my years, that I've been in a lot of different spaces, like I said, such as the Commons. I've been in conversation with facilities, in conversation with student affairs, and having a lot of relationships with not only administrations, but departments really allows myself as a student body representative to help these administrators and people who make really big decisions for the university to understand what students need. And I know that this year is going to be completely different than any other year that we've had. And so I want to make sure that students' needs are not only met in San Diego and on campus, but virtually, and also met through their identities that are not always showcased. And so I can use my experience of the organizations I've been a part of, the departments I've been a part of, and the work that I've done in order to be in a lot of different environments and represent those environments as much as possible, and utilizing communication, social media, and like Justice said, office hours and the resources that we have to connect with the students, with administrators.
Perfect, thank you. Our next question, the ASG president must be able to maintain relationships with university personnel at all levels. What would that look like to you, and how would you go about establishing positive relationships? Fantasy.
Thank you so much. Communication and relationships is very important to me, and especially as it comes to this new year, with kind of having trust in the university and having that vulnerability and that proactiveness. And like I said, I have been in relationship with administrators such as President Harris, Dr. Avery, Provost Baker, Dean Womack, a lot of people in student affairs, and also other departments that don't really get talked about, such as One Stop, financial aid services, career development, the DLDRC, study abroad. All of these services are provided for students, as you know, they do pay a lot to our program. And I want to make sure that they know about these certain administrators that are there for them, not only to help them, but give them resources throughout their time at USD, but also after USD. The relationships are so important. And I think having my foot in the door, having met with so many of these departments and administrators, it's really helped this platform that I will have. It'll just kind of showcase that I can have that relationship with them even more, and that they will trust me as a student representative, as someone who has came to them without the leadership title and just for concern of students. And now that I have this, if I have this position, you know, I'll be able to actually make the time, effort, and energy to listen to students and relay those messages to the administrators. So I'm really excited to be working with them, to collaborate with them, to collaborate together, because we know that we don't live single issued lives, and that a lot of these services and departments are going to have to work together in order to make students experience the best that it can be.
Fantasy, you're at time.
Thank you, Fantasy. Justice, your response.
Thank you for the question, Lauren. Just to recap, the question was the ASG president must be able to maintain relationships with university personnel at all levels, and what would that look like to us? How would we go about establishing positive relationships? So as Fantasy said, also an important value for me is consistent communication. So I will for sure be able to reach out to all of the administration. And also one goal that I have personally is to bridge communication between administration and students directly. Students always reach out to administration. Unfortunately, we see that they don't really respond back as we've seen letters this year. So I'd be hoping to be the avenue between the two, and also just having direct avenues. So whether it be like more what to fix forums through ASG where we have administration come, or inviting directly administration to ASG Senate meetings. I've also had relationships with administration, so they know that I'm very passionate about communicating with them and being transparent fully. And whatever doesn't get communicated back to the students, I'll be sure to do that for sure, as it's really important that students know exactly what administration's doing, and vice versa. We want administration to know what students want and what they desire as well. So again, consistent communication is really important for me, and establishing positive relationship would be empathetic, and hoping that administration would be empathetic to us as well, along with actively listening to us, and having that relationship involve that as well.
Okay, thank you both. For our next question, we would like for you to name one initiative that you would like the incoming ASG Executive Board to prioritize for next year. And how would you utilize all of the ASG branches and campus resources to accomplish this initiative? Justice, you can start.
Yes, thank you so much, Ashley. So one initiative that I would love to get started with is, personally, as an out-of-state student, I have recognized that sometimes transportation can be really incredibly challenging, and we need essential needs. We need to go off campus to get groceries, to go to doctor offices and visits. So I know within my second year, when I was an academic senator and served under Student Life Committee, we brought back grocery trams, and it was a really great resource that I used. So I would hope to bring those back again, and to have all the branches be involved. Also just extending that transportation so that it's consistent into other locations, as our campus is kind of in an awkward spot where you really do need transportation to get through. Also having Lyft be available via Lyft codes. Another initiative I would like to have is to kind of increase security as well on our campus in terms of who's coming into it. I come from a town where unfortunately a lot of students were lost due to gun violence, and it's been really challenging for me as a student going into USD. Sometimes there's not a lot of comfortability, but again, definitely wanting to explore how we can make students feel safe, whether that's training or whatnot. And again, just another initiative is to increase communication amongst all the branches of ASG so that we can be stronger as a student government as well.
Okay, Fantasy, you can go ahead and respond.
Thank you so much for this question. And as I've stated to some platforms like UC Vista, it's really hard to focus on one main thing. Like I said, we don't live single issue lives, and it's really hard to act like there's one priority that needs to be made next year, because there's so many things that are changing. This part, especially since I know that keeping a virtual/hybrid model is very important for next year for vulnerable students, for vulnerable professors, for vulnerable staff that still don't know what's going on, although there is a vaccine. Virtual funding and grants for students is probably one of my top priorities, is that some students who are not at USD or even in San Diego can get any services from USD. Therefore, they're having to take funds out of their own pocket or even drop out of university because they're not having that support from their home or virtually. So I want to make sure issues like houselessness, food insecurity, and even tech needs are being met while folks are in their own comfortability of their home or wherever they are doing USD online. And so I want to make sure that branches like Student Life and Student Wellness and our discretionary funds can really support these grants and this funding, not only on campus for people who are able to make it, but also people who are not going to be able to make it on campus. And also the relationships with admins such as Dr. Avery and Student Affairs is really going to be highlighted through the different funding that we can prioritize for all students to have their needs met.
Great, thank you. Our next question. In the past, many students have communicated their need for an extended pass-fail deadline and were disappointed with the university's response. How would you respond to constituent pushback in a way that demonstrates support for their needs while maintaining professional working relationships with our administrators? Fantasy, go ahead.
Thank you so much. This is definitely a very current issue. And if I'm not mistaken, we're still going through the process of this dialogue with administration. And I've actively been at the forefront with having that communication from administration to professors, to students, and to student activists and student groups on what the students need. I don't think that students would be asking for this if they didn't actually need it. As much as we've been through this for about a year now, it doesn't get any easier. And that's what I have advocated and spoke for in ASG meetings. Even as a senator, as a student, as someone who is experiencing the effects of not having pass fail. And so I just want to make sure that students on both ends are being understood and are being represented, because I know that some students don't want to blame the university. They don't want to blame professors. I don't want to blame them either. And we have to know who to keep accountable in order for us to have the best academic success. And if that means having policy that kind of gives us a little bit more support, such as pass fail, then that means that some students need it. And if you don't need it, that is totally fine. And you're getting the support that you do need, but we need to make sure that we are keeping an eye out and being representative of our most vulnerable students. And if that means that we're going to have this policy in order for students not to drop out or not feel supported, then I think that we're going to have to do everything that we can. But we do need that empathy, as Justice was talking about, from students and from administration. We're all going through this together, and it's not going to get any easier if we are going against each other. So I'm really excited for the unity that this could bring.
Thank you. Justice, your response?
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, so as public relations chair, I've actually gotten directly emails from students saying they were really upset about the decision that the administration made. And I had to respond to them, with unfortunate news that unfortunately administration isn't listening to us. And even though Provost Baker, I believe, came to us, still there wasn't a lot of change made. So I've had to directly talk to constituents, but I've let them know that we're still pushing for it and we're still talking. It's a really important conversation to have, because quite honestly, it's the least that the school could do for students right now is giving the option for pass fail, not administering pass fail, but quite literally the option for it. So it's still a really strong, it's still a fight that we're going through, and a lot of other universities are doing for it, are advocating for the option for it. So it's still super important that we continue to fight for it, and that we're there to support the students. Again, we're here to serve what the students want, and if the students want it, then we're going to fight for it. And again, as a student myself, I think it's really unfortunate that we don't have the option for it. And again, it's not that the professors themselves have really anything that they can do, but it's the administration. So I'm hoping that we can have more communication, especially direct communication, whether it's with the students or senators or all the branches of ASG with administration, to let's get this conversation starting to understand each other's side and why this isn't happening and why students really want it.
Thank you both. Also, just a reminder to anybody on the call, if you have any questions that you would like to ask the candidates, please feel free to use the Q&A feature, and then we'll ask those once we've asked all of the pre-planned questions. So for the next question, as president, what steps would you take to help students transition back to campus in the fall? Justice, you can start.
Sorry, I'm just rereading the question. Oh yes, so I think it's really important for students to have a safe transition back to school. I know I'm concerned, as I've been on the East Coast, and I'm concerned about going back. So I would definitely want to be there to kind of gather feedback first and foremost, see how students are feeling, see how we as a campus can make it feel safe for all students. I think it's really, if we fully transition back in person, as whether it's be fully vaccinated, but with masks, I think it's still really concerning, because it's been a really hard adjustment to get to remote learning, and I'm sure it'd be a really hard adjustment to go back into full in-person learning. So I think we need to start setting the ground rules for how we can keep each other accountable and how we can keep each other safe, because again, we all want to be back, we all want to return to in-person learning, but we have to do it in a safely manner. And I want to express that is directly to whoever's involved with making the decision of deciding whether we go back or not. And I think it's really, really, really important that we prioritize our safety first and foremost, because we're trying to get out of this pandemic and we're not trying to get and to speed into it. We want to make the safest and the best decision for all. So definitely gathering feedback and communicating what the students want and what and adapting to the comfortability of everyone.
Nancy, you can start.
Thank you. I think the most important thing about next year will be giving students agency, option, and support. Even with the pass bill, we've seen that students aren't given the agency to do what they need to do in order to be successful. And so this year, it's going to be really important to connect the hybrid model in the best way possible and being proactive. So no matter what, we are going to have to make sure students and even staff and faculty and professors, if professors don't have the agency to come or not, then students are going to be also confused. And I know that last year, it was a little bit confusing because I think we knew, like 2 weeks before that we were going all virtual. So I think it's being proactive in the communication. And I know that if president works with the administration through the summer in order to be proactive in connecting with the students and making sure they know what they need to know. And so as Universal Design Committee coordinator, I have focused on that virtual accessibility and making sure students can access it and also that they're getting their needs met. If folks feel like they cannot come back, if students feel like they're not going to succeed by coming back and being in a high risk area, then I want them to have the option to be able to be online. But that means that we need to provide the support and the funding and being, reaching out to them and letting them know that they can do whatever they need to do in order to be successful. Because at the end of the day, we don't need numbers on campus. We need numbers to graduate and to be successful and to feel the best that they can after being at USD.
Thank you. And our next question is, how would you lead an ASG response to a hate crime or act of intolerance that occurs either in our nation or the USD community? How would you demonstrate a continued support for USD's marginalized students that goes beyond a solidarity statement? And Fantasy, you may start.
Yes, y'all giving us the heavy questions and I'm so here for it. And this conversation is very real, as we've seen. If you have been with us, students have been with us in the past 2 years and even before that, we know that this is not disconnected from USD. USD is not in their own little bubble to where we can just focus on our own issues. A lot of national, local, and just community issues will affect us. And as we know, we're in a pretty vulnerable population and community in Linda Vista, and we still need to be more proactive in supporting them. And so as for hate crimes, I'm definitely not going to take it as seriously as possible as a student leader. And so I can communicate that with administration. If we need an emergency meeting, we're going to have an emergency meeting. And I know that we've had to do that in the past as I was on ASG, and we've had meetings at like 7 p.m. because we needed to talk about certain things. And I think that that is just going to have to be what happens, is being as proactive and as urgent as possible and making sure that all of the people directly affected in the situation are supported as much as they can. And we're not going to try to be supportive to the perpetrators or try to act like there's laws in place that are going to protect them. We need to protect our people and the people that are most directly affected. And so I think it's just important to connect with students and see what they need and have direct avenues of communication, whether that's a Google form, a group me, something that directly can talk to executive branch and senators as a whole, so then we can go and talk to administration and get things moving and get things to talk about, and then action being made from there. I want action every meeting that we have and not just dialogue.
Okay. I was just about to cut you off.
Thank you, Nancy. Justice?
Thank you so much. This is a really great question. And just within my experience as the public relations chair on eBoard this year, I found the most #1 lesson is to not be reactive and to actually step back and observe what's going on. I will say that I think one thing I would like to do is not have simply just the executive board come out with a statement and try to figure out how we can better, but get all branches together, whether it's we figure out a one meeting thing, or if it's in Senate, we have all representatives come in. We need all branches to be involved with responding to it, and how we can keep each other accountable for learning and how we can be better as human beings as well. And again, this is really just going back to one of my goals being uplifting marginalized voices. How can we as ASG members and as students support our groups on campus by attending their events, by learning how we can re-educate ourselves, how can we also pressure administration to do better as well? Because again, as ASG, I think we are really capable of making a really significant change and also changing just everything really. So how can we keep not only one another accountable, but also going to administration to actually respond to those letters and make change effectively? And again, it has to be above and beyond a solidarity statement. A solidarity statement really quite literally doesn't do anything. And if it's going to come out anyways, it should come out from all branches and not just one branch. Thank you.
Thank you both. So for the next question, as a student leader, it is important to demonstrate responsible, safe behavior during a global pandemic. How have you and how will you continue to demonstrate responsible behavior as we transition back to campus? Justice, you can start.
Thank you for that question, Ashley. I think it's really important, again, to hold one another accountable. If we see something that shouldn't be happening, that's against the guidelines, or that can really spread COVID-19, I think it's really important that we point it out and we say that's not okay and that can't be happening. I personally have stayed home this entire year. It's been a year and a half pretty much almost now at this point. And it's exhausting to see people and folks really not being able to hold to the standard that they need to be held. So I've been very responsible personally. And again, I've encouraged my peers, my members, my networks to also be safe because it's a collective effort. It's not just an individual effort. And it's really important to have the safe behavior happen. And again, as a student leader, I would encourage the university to do better as well. I know as guidelines have just been lifted and we've gone down to the orange tier, we've seen that groups of 50 can gather outside, and personally, I think it's still a little bit questionable as it's been a really quick transition, and we still need to be having ensured that everyone has their mask on, everyone is getting tested, everyone is staying isolated, everyone is staying 6 feet apart. And if we can get those vaccines going, please, that's really the next step forward. So.
Great, thank you. Fantasy, you can respond.
Thank you so much for this question. I think it's ongoing, and I think that it is different for a lot of different people. I knew as soon as the pandemic hit, I was one of the first to know from the DLDRC, just because I am autoimmune compromised and I have a disability to where I'm going to be at high risk. And I knew I had to be selfish for myself and go back home. And with that being said, I had so many issues with housing insecurity and financial insecurity that I had to move a lot. And people might assume that I had to, I was out here doing a lot of different other things, but for my mental health and for my financial health, I had to do a lot of things that really just broke my mental and physical character. But I know that this is very prevalent for a lot of people during a pandemic. Houselessness, funding, insecurity, a lot of these things happen. And sometimes we just have to do what we can in the moment. But that does mean keeping each other accountable and making sure that they're supported. We can't be accusatory of folks who are just trying to do what they can to survive in the moment. But what we can let them know is that their actions will affect the greater community. And I think that's important to understand that it's not just us in this game. And as much as we have to make sure that we are okay, we also have to make sure that our actions aren't affecting others in a negative way. And I think the university also, yes, can do a better job at making this a more collective effort and not being accusatory. And as much as I know that there's a vaccine coming out, as a person with a disability, it's hard for me to get a vaccine just because I don't know what's going to do to my body. But I also know that I want to be safe for everyone else. So I want everyone to know that this is a collective effort. Do what you can for yourself, but know it's a general problem.
Thank you, Fantasy. Our last pre-planned question is, students have voiced that they have been struggling to get involved with co-curriculars due to Zoom fatigue. What ideas do you have to improve student engagement once we return to campus? Fantasy, you may start.
Thank you so much. This one is definitely also ongoing, and I'm hoping with the maybe more hybrid model with a little bit more optimism in the world that we could be a little bit more excited to engage virtually. I totally understand that it's not it's not exciting, it's not exhilarating, it's not the same as being in person, being online. And Zoom fatigue is probably one of the biggest things that have completely disrupted my mental health, and I know others as well. And so I want to make sure that we have resources such as the counseling center, and different ways of making sure that we're checking in beyond just going to school online, because I know that school being online and then clubs being online and then work being online, like I remember being at my desk for like 10 hours out of the day, and it was just so exhausting. And so I want to make sure maybe that we can have like maybe pockets of little things to do. I know that student wellness has kind of created like the on-campus small amounts of activities to do, or some people have even done book clubs, or some folks have even gotten engaged in like instruments and personal things that can have them develop personally and make sure like their soul is being taken care of and their mental health is being taken care of. So I want to improve based on what students want to be done, whether that's more funding for them at home to do what they can to take care of themselves, or whether it's more funding for safety precautions at USD so students can come to the campus and feel that community engagement. But I just know that I will not validate that Zoom fatigue is super real. And I don't blame anybody who doesn't want to be online anymore. It's a lot to take in, but I'm hoping that with more communication and more community and more optimism, we're able to get a little bit more motivation to continue the years at USD.
Thank you. Justice, your response.
Thank you, Lauren. Yeah, that's a really great question. And I'm also personally struggling with Zoom fatigue. Sometimes I really don't go to a lot of my club meetings because I just can't handle to be at 12 o'clock at night on Zoom. I really need my rest. I need to go to bed. And that's another struggle as well, where there's a lot of Zoom events happening at specific times that aren't really accommodating for time zones. So if there's any events that we can have that are kind of like we ship them a little pack and they can do hands-on activities, or if they go outside. I know TPB did a really great job when we first transitioned into quarantine right after March, where you can do like TikTok competitions. You can make really lighthearted things that don't require Zoom. I know I've had to help coordinate with events and Zoom, and it's really hard to be creative during this time. But if we do transition back to to campus next semester in a hybrid manner, I hope to have some kind of activities that you can do with your roommates, get to know your roommates a little bit more if you're coming to the USD for the first time, or how you can go on and explore San Diego in a safely manner. I know, again, it's been really a struggle to get student engagement. I've seen it firsthand, and it's really hard to be creative, but hopefully with the motivation and the excitement of being potentially hybrid next semester, we can be a little bit more creative and still adhere to the guidelines and go ahead and do some fun things that can require exploring, again, with proper transportation, proper financial situation. So yeah.
Great, thank you both. We are going to transition into the Q&A portion from the members of the public. So the first question that we've received is, how will you continue to handle the current COVID-19 pandemic in both your administrative and personal roles? If you guys could just keep expanding on that. Justice?
Yes, thank you for that question. Personally, I got vaccinated. I've been very fortunate to get a vaccine. I know it's been really difficult for a lot of folks. So also just whatever resources I can find, expanding it. Personally, I've been staying home. I really haven't seen anyone for a really long time, and it's been a struggle for me, but I know that I'm doing it for the better good. I definitely am missing San Diego quite a bit. But within my administrative role, again, it's really holding each other accountable, making sure it is a collective act, while of course you're being considerate of others. But the only way to end this pandemic is if we're all under the same page, and if we all do our part, quite literally do our part. Keep your mask on, stay at a safe distance. If you are fortunate to be under housing, to stay home if you can't. Have folks around you, get resources. We get resources around that can help students. We're really fortunate enough to gather a lot of resources as ASG, and we have the financial means to provide those. So if we can, to maximize it as much as we can to help support everyone and anyone.
Thank you. Fantasy, you can respond.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's really important to continue to talk about this conversation. I think it's going to look different from today than it looks a month later, and even 6 months, and even once fall hits, and then maybe even spring. So constantly having this conversation, because it's not going away anytime soon, especially since we are dealing with the repercussions of not really knowing what to do or not doing much over the past year, or some people not being on the same page, as Justice has stated. So do what you can to make sure you're staying healthy and you're staying safe. Again, I will just mention that the vaccine looks different for a lot of different people, whether you're fortunate enough to get it, you might have the insurance to get it, whether you have the typical body to get it. So the vaccine might be an option for you, mask might be an option for you, staying in close quarters in the housing if you're able to have housing with people that can support you. I know that when I stayed with my 2 roommates in San Diego, they were my support system, and we kind of just did roommate things in our house. And so making sure that we're continuing to talk about the conversations, making sure we're listening to folks and departments and organizations such as the CDC. The university, I'm hoping, is doing their part at an administrative level to understand what's going on and what's best for the university. Therefore, they can connect that to student representatives, specifically, hopefully, ASG president, to relay that to students as much as possible. And just letting students know that they will be supported in any way they can, and that they just need to be staying safe and knowing that this is a collective effort that is going to affect everyone for a really long time, globally even.
Thank you. And our next question from the public is, how do you envision event programming for next year, considering we might be in a hybrid model? Fantasy, you can start.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is also a conversation to continue to be had. And I think this is something that departments and organizations are having as we speak, as they are requesting for funding next semester. I know that our last report is coming up for funding requests for departments. They are trying to think about this. And I think talking with them about what has worked through the last year and what needs to be done. If there needs to be more funding that's given to folks to have greater virtual events, or bringing in guest speakers that, still need to get paid, but it's on a virtual aspect, I think that will help. Also, just making sure we work with programs like TBB and like Student Life and even Student Wellness on events that we can do on campus, and make sure the students who are paying to be on campus and taking the time and energy are still being safe and still being prioritized. But I think that programming is going to look different, but it's going to be expansive, because we do have, or hopefully we will have, the virtual/hybrid model. But I think as much as people are getting Zoom fatigue, they're also trying to find ways to be creative with how they can engage people online, whether it's through Zoom, whether it's through Netflix watch parties, whether it's through, just different types of other online avenues to where people are getting more engaged. And this is not only affecting USD, but jobs and departments and organizations. So just reaching out to other people who are also doing this work, and kind of getting more excitement and motivation to continue this next year with the complexities that it has and the hybrid that it should still have.
Thank you, Justice.
Yes, thank you so much for this question. I definitely will be prioritizing working in collaboration with our program board if it's pertaining to school-wide events, because I know it's also been really hard to figure out how we can kind of lower the Zoom fatigue and do some expansive activities. But again, working collaboration with all of our centers, our organizations on campus, along with our program board. And again, safety is the #1 priority. So making sure we can have students be active, but also be safe as well. I know it's been for sure a struggle, but again, it's really just hoping to be with the guidelines. Again, as Fantasy mentioned earlier, every month, every day looks so different. But if we're in a hybrid model, definitely prioritizing to make sure that students are doing more off the computer kind of activities. I think that's another thing we'd love to see. And it's been really great so far with what TBB has done. I really applaud them for trying, but whether it's working that with them to be more, how we can be more creative again in that hybrid model, how we can have how we can support these like grab and go events as well. I'd love to see more of that. And again, yeah, looking forward to how next semester will bring us and what will bring us.
Great, thank you guys. One more question that we have for you guys. How have you prioritized inclusion, diversity, and equity in your individual previous ASG roles? Justice, you can start.
Yes, thank you so much for that question. I have been in numerous conversations with a lot of administration pertaining to this, as well as students, on how we can maximize inclusion, diversity, and equity on campus. As public relations chair also, I have purposely looked for events that pertain to maximizing inclusion, diversity, and equity on campus and help support them as much as we can. I think it's really important that we do prioritize ID&E in our individual roles as well. So getting to know how to educate ourselves, how to educate others, how we can make our campus more inclusive at every aspect. It's been really important for me, and it's been my own personal goal, and I hope to bring that as your next student body president. But again, just really getting comfortable to have these conversations on how we can change our daily lives. Within ASG, also, our ID&E chair, Ezra, has done a really great job with really great, awesome initiatives. I know there's a new podcast that's coming up with Senator Ari. I'm giving a shout out to the podcast, where we have, identities come in and talk about and have these subjects that all these students need to learn and to know more about and get comfortable with.
Fantasy, you can respond.
Yeah, thank you so much. As a residential senator, when I first came into ASG, I was making sure that students in my resident were being heard and actively being listened to, and that specifically also was involving people of marginalized identities, of the diversity and inclusion that they needed in the spaces to feel safe. Also, just as student org committee chair, being very attentive to which student orgs are being mostly talked about and which student orgs are not really having as much support. And so we made sure that the inclusion of new student orgs and of diverse and multicultural student orgs were being heard. We created piloted a first-year mentorship program to just make sure that we were being active in the support that they needed and the inclusion that they needed from other student orgs who have been around for a while. As at-large senator, I've been trying to be on as many, in collaboration with as many bills and resolutions that really promote gender equity and racial justice and actively even the accessibility of people with disabilities. That's why I created Universal Design Ad Hoc Committee to really put into action the inclusion and diversity that needs to continue to happen on campus with the intersecting identities that we do have. And I just know that we've had organizations such as Trill or Not Trill come to the university and be very in active support and involvement in the conversations that we continuously need to have. And I know that will happen next year, to have more on and off campus partners come in and talk about this situation, because it can't be talked about in a little bubble.
Thank you, Fantasy.
All right, those are all the questions that we have for you guys today. If you guys would like to go ahead and start giving your closing remarks, we can start with you.
We actually did get another question in the chat.
Oh, one more. So sorry.
What are your priorities for using the student activity fee to allocate the ASG budget? And that would be Fantasy starting.
Thank you so much for this question. I think it's very important to acknowledge and be open about students funding these positions and funding these people that are going to make decisions for them. It's really important to understand where the money is going. And I'm forever grateful for folks who have came into ASG meetings and have actively questioned us about where is the funding going and kind of moving it in different areas. And I know that being in finance meetings last year when I was a committee chair, I really had was helping move the needle in ways that it wasn't being talked about, such as having more funding for departments in the commons area and having more funding for programs like student support services and the DLDRC, who are underfunded and underserved and understaffed. And so I was making sure those conversations were being had, but also I think the main thing is having that avenue of connection and communication between students and letting them know, hey, here's an active visual representation of where we're putting your money. Do y'all like this or not? And if they don't, okay, let's move it. Let's change it. Let's see where we need to put it. And if y'all do, okay, let's pass it and let's actually be active about giving these people in departments and these support systems the funding. And so I think that we should always question where our student activity fee is going and always question the budget every quarter and every really instance that we feel is not justified or it's not talked about. And I think talking with the finance chair in the executive branch, if I were ASG president, would be super important to let them know that they have a lot of weight that is going to be put on them, but also I'm there for them. The executive branch is there for them. Senators are there for them, and students just want to know what's going on. So I think that transparency and that communication is going to be really important, but funding really is what makes the university do what they need to do. And so we just need to push it as much as we can in places that we see fit.
Right. Thank you, Fantasy.
Justice, your response.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a really great question, because at the end of the day, you all pay for that and you want to get your money's worth back. And whether it be programming, whether it be through the commons, I think it's really important, as Fantasy said, for students to question where their money is going. And as PR chair, I worked alongside with finance chair this year to provide a graphic of specifically defining where the student activity fee goes. And a lot of them does go to our ASG ops, it goes to our commons. And again, we can open that conversation and we invite for criticism on it too. We think it's really what you all deserve to get your money's worth back, and what events you want to see exactly how is it. And a lot of students don't even really know what the student activity fee entails and how it's broken down. So I hope to work alongside with the finance chair to see how we can be more transparent, how we can open and open for criticism, open for suggestions, open to see where we can improve within the ASG activity fee. I would also love to see potentially more scholarships going out, or potentially just how we can, as senators, as our branches, also utilize the money to actively be good stewards of it, and to promote events, or to promote anything really to help students be successful, to feel included, to feel helped, to be acknowledged. It's really important, again, that it goes back to the students, and students should be able to speak up and to say where they want their money to go.
Right, thank you both. Now we've answered all of our questions. So thank you guys so much for your time today. And now we will have you guys start with your closing statements. Justice, you can start.
Yes, thank you all so much for this amazing opportunity and privilege to be here today. I just want to say thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to Fantasy and I. And again, thank you to Lauren and Ashley for moderating, and to all our advisors that are putting everything behind the scenes. I'm here for you. As your next ASG president, I would love to help support you all in any way possible. This fight is for us. It's a fight for our voice to be heard. I really want to connect with you all. I open for students to come talk to me. Regardless of the position I am, I really want to help this build relationships so we can succeed, so we can be successful, included, and acknowledged as students again. And I really hope to pressure administration to question everything, to change our mindsets on a lot of things, and really just challenge the system that we're in, to challenge what any taboos. I'm really here for the students, and I appreciate you all, and thank you so much for everything again.
Fantasy, you can share.
Thank you so much. I just want to say, since I was young, I've always been a people person, super social, a social butterfly, as my mom would kind of call me. And as kind of like, that is kind of like the insect, or the thing that I envision myself is to be changing and growing. One of my greatest strengths and weaknesses is that I put people's needs and support sometimes before myself, but I know that it's a priority. I approach leadership through empathy, equity, and representation, and supporting my communities through leadership has always been a passion of mine. And I know that this was a step in the right direction for me, as I was been involved in ASG for years and embodying the change maker role. I hope students want to vote for me based on the experiences I've had in ASG, along with the passion I show for the change at USD for the 3 years, and even my last year, and continuing after I graduate. I'm really eager and excited to end my last year on a positive note, building relationships with students, working together with administration, and changing the university to fit current students' needs. As ASG president, some of my goals will be to increase student motivation individually and collectively to reach their full potential, acknowledge the history and the harm of systemic actions in order to move forward with progressive solutions, and support USD in developing action towards equity, inclusion, and accessibility. And I know that the USD Vista has done an article on both Justice and I encourage y'all to go look at those articles to get to know us more. And also on my Instagram, I'm very open and vulnerable on my Instagram. As much as I want to campaign for myself, I always also want y'all to know me and who I'm about and what I envision in my values and goals. So thank y'all so much as well.
Thank you, Fantasy and Justice both. And thank you to our attendees for all of your questions. We're For our closing remarks, voting will be available on your My San Diego portal tonight at midnight to Friday night at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time. If you are interested in applying for our appointed positions, please head over to your ASG elections website and complete the application. The deadline to complete this application is tomorrow, Thursday, April 15th at midnight Pacific time. And that wraps up our debate. Thank you so much, Justice and Fantasy, for your participation, and best of luck to you both. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and please make sure to vote on your My San Diego portal.